Now let's learn a little bit about the grammar of sculpting inside of ZBrush. I'm going to assume you're comfortable in just a very simple way with navigation and you're comfortable with interface. And now what I'm going to do is go through and show you how you can be doing the sculpting inside of ZBrush from a sculptor's perspective. My focus is to give you the tools as you need them and within the context that you'll need them. First, a little bit of setup. So I'm going to come to Lightbox and I'm going to load in this case, let's load in a default Dino Wax. Okay, just double click it and hit, in this case I'm going to say no, don't save. There we go. Alright, now I've got my model here. I'm going to double check that symmetry is on, and symmetry means that there are these two dots on either side. You want to make sure that you've got your grid. This will really help orientate you. Okay? If you don't have your grid on, then you press this button that says floor, right on the right of the canvas. Okay? It's going to be on with that project though. So symmetry is on, and now I'm going to come into my brush palette and I'm going to select the very first brush that we're going to work with. That's the move brush. So click it, and we're going to increase our draw size. Okay, draw size is right up there at the top. Let's get that interface out of the way. So draw size is right here, and we're going to leave all the rest of these settings as they are. I'm not going to worry about them just yet. I'll introduce them as we need. What you'll see me do a lot is press the S key. S as in Sam. What you do is you press it and let go. Okay, don't hold it down because then it gets weird. Just press it, let go, and then you can drag left or right to increase the size. Now the first step, basically let me set you up with what we're going to do. What we're going to do is create a head, really basic head. But we're going to do it with a bit of craftsmanship in mind. So our first step is that we need to go in and establish the overall form. So we start off, of course, with a sphere, just a ball of clay on the canvas. And then we take that sphere and we start to pull out a little chunk for the jaw. And then we cut out a little chunk for the back of the head. And then we come in and we start to add a little bit for the nose. We pull in for the eyes. We add a little bit for the mouth. And we start to do internal shaping and all of that good stuff. So our first step is establishing some volume. So I'm going to set my draw size about 160. I'm going to rotate this around so it's kind of at a side view. This is not exactly a side view. If I was to say draw a cube, okay, we're going to be a little bit from above and a little bit from the side. So our front view would be coming from here, and we're in a 3/4 perspective. That's what I really want you to be. I want you to be emphasizing not the side view, but a 3/4 view. And then we're going to pull the jaw down, and when we move the model, the floor updates and it drops to the bottommost part. That's fine. That's what we want. Okay, we're going to just get this roughly in position and press Shift to snap it. One thing to keep in mind, perspective is on. I'm going to leave it on. 9 times out of 10 I sculpt with perspective on. There are people who sculpt with it off, but I sculpt with it on because perspective it's your eyes. That's when you're working in clay in the real world, you're working in perspective. The only thing I might do is come up here to the draw palette, my angle of view, and I usually set that at about 50 so there's less distortion. Now I know that's an extra interface item. It might confuse you, so if it does, just ignore it, keep perspective at what it was. But otherwise I go to the draw palette and set angle of view at 50 so that there's less distortion. And that's better when you're working on a face because if it's too much distortion, the face really, things just go a bit on the nutty side and start to look unrealistic. Alright, so we've done our first step. We've pulled the jaw down a little bit. Now I'm going to lower my draw size, and I'm just going to pull up the back of the head a little bit. Try to set myself up with a very natural cranium and mandible section. Like that. There you go. Okay, so what you want at this stage is a cut out of the back, a slope for the jaw, the mandible's angle, and then room for the brain. That's our goal. Okay, and that's all we do with the move brush. We're just establishing basic, simple structure. What we might do with the move brush now is go in and push the orbit of the eye in. Make sure that the cheekbone has some space, and start to separate out the masseter from the face plate. So from a sculpting perspective, I've got 3 breaks here, and I always use these lines. This is a very important rhythm line here, and it really sets up the side of the face from the front of the face. We got to be thinking about planes even at this level. And one of the things that separates the front of the face from the side of the face is really where that masseter starts to connect in there with the zygomatic bone. So you've got your zygomatic bone coming back in space, coming into that ear hole. You've got the overhang. The zygomatic is coming here, the temporal line, and then you've got the jaw dropping down from there. We've also got the pull in for the glabella, the nasal bone, a bunch of other stuff that we're going to start to focus on right now. But the key element, the one that is really important here that I want to emphasize, is that we're going to create a 1, 2, 3-part curve. How do I do that? With the move brush, I'm going to set my draw size at about 70, look at it 3/4, and I want to get halfway. So I'm envisioning where the halfway point is. Alright, I'm about there now. And I'm just going to pull back. Might need to lower my draw size so I can get a little bit of smaller form being pulled in there. And I'm dragging to the left. That's all I'm doing. The way this works is you position your model so that dragging left or right will push and pull it in the right way. So I can only move left or right as far as I know right now. Okay, side view. Set up the brow. I might even pull the brow to get that, what's called the frontal eminence. Get the bone, sorry, not the bone, the nose. And then watch as I come in with this nose. This is really important. I'm adjusting up. I am pulling up and tucking this topology upwards, and then pulling it out a little bit. I'll adjust my draw size by pressing S, and I just want some kind of plane change. I'm also at this point mindful of the forehead, sorry, and the mouth. You got to be keeping in mind where these guys are in relationship to each other. You are sculpting the profile right now. A little bit of hit for the mouth. We can zoom in and start to separate out the mouth from the chin. Notice that I am constantly going to a 3/4 view, and I am pulling up and tucking down and in, up, down, and in and up. So my brush stroke was pull up, tug down, pull up, tug down, and that set me up with a nice plane change and a really strong chin. All of it with a move. It's the same thing with the nose. You're pulling up and then tugging down. Up and tugging down. And then it sets you up with the nose, the plane change for the nose, columella, all that stuff. Okay? Keep in mind, or be mindful of, the shapes you're making in the profile. And just make sure you're analyzing the plane of the face. So I think that's an okay shape. We haven't really looked at it from a side view, and that's alright. We're still with the move brush, and boom! Does not look pretty, right? Looks like we got some problems, and that's fine. That's par for the course. So you start out with something like this. You get your profile view comfortable. If you're doing some kind of creature, you know, or something, you might move things forward. Whatever you're going to do, I'm going to stay realistic so that you've got a point of reference for what I do. And actually, before we move to the front view, I want to do that part that I told you I was going to do, and then ignored and started focusing on the front. So let's get the S curve. Orbit of the eye, zygomatic, and masseter. Okay, I've already clicked and pulled back from the center, and that's the curve here. The zygomatic exists, and then I've got the masseter. So I'm going to leave the zygomatic alone, and I'm going to focus now on the masseter, clicking in various points and pulling in, and I'll quite naturally just create that circle. Lower my draw size. Don't mind getting that back a little bit. Okay, as I do that, there's extra room in here. Makes me want to adjust the nose. Okay. And then kind of makes me want to adjust the mandible a bit as well. Alright. So that's what I would consider a fairly successful side view, as long as I'm okay with my halfway point, which it looks like I am. I'm going to drop out of perspective and just verify. Let's do that in white. And then hold my, yeah, we're in okay shape. Perspective is back on. And now the last thing we do is come into the front view. The last thing we do with the move brush, that is, or at least with this stage. Make sure symmetry is on. Okay, symmetry is also turned on by transform activate symmetry, or the X key. So you can often get that disabled if you're accidentally clicking X. Okay, I'm going to just move in the side of the head and move in the mandible, the jaw. So there's 2 points. I was moving in here and here, and the radius of the brushes overlapped enough to make it easy for me. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to do another important anatomical change in planes. If you look at a lot of Bridgman drawings, so one of the things you'll really see is he always has the cheekbone as one arc, the overhang, and the what's called the frontocephaloidal process of the zygomatic. Just ignore what I just said, it's insane. And basically the outside of the eye, and then the frontal eminence. So these are all separate planes or separate curves that you can see inside of a model that really help you get a sense of where to separate the front and the side planes. Okay, because where I'm outlining in red is going to be a side plane or a transition to a side plane. And what we're going to do is just make sure that we've got this change in plane from the zygomatic to the brow to the frontal eminence. So zygomatic, brow, and let's just say forehead. Okay, that's just common language. In fact, zygomatic is not common. Let's use cheek. Cheek to brow to forehead. Okay, I'm just going to move that in and move this in a touch. You might have to adjust some of this stuff in the back. And there we go. Now I'm doing a lot of anatomical stuff, and I know this is just the very beginning of your experience inside of ZBrush. But bear with me and go through this process. I'm taking the nose now, and I'm going to be pulling this inwards so that I can get a side plane for the nose. And the side plane of the nose is going to be a lot less than I have it right now. Again, I do all of this with the move brush, and I'm grabbing in the eye and pulling in. So I'm grabbing, let's look at it from below so you can see that. I'm grabbing from this bottom plane, okay, not from the top, not here, but from the bottom plane. And that's going to help set up the elements I need. Alright. At a certain point you might need to go in and just trim that interior plane. But looking at it from below is also another really important tool. Okay, from the side view, and I'm just going to pull that in there. That's going to be a good amount of change with the standard brush. I'm sorry, the move brush. I'm going to be kind of happy with that. Now, if you want to know a little bit more of the anatomy of what I'm doing, let me walk you through the brow. We've got the front plane of the nose. We've established a side plane of the nose. Okay, we've also established a down plane for the glabella, and then some of the plane changes of the glabella as well. Okay, the glabella then comes around and it has a nice form that's merging in with the superciliary arch. Okay, and it's going to have this roundness. And all of these guys just kind of descend down and all the way into the corner of the eye. These kind of bunch around to where you get the overhang and then the, oops, wrong direction. And then the side of the eye, which has its own forms, the zygomatic or the cheekbone, which has its own, and then we're basically developing the orbit of the eye here with the frontocephaloidal process and all that stuff, and then you get the eyeball kind of stuck in there. So those are kind of some of the simple things that I'm looking at that you can be looking at as well, and this is some of the directionality of how, or some direction of how you would get in and establish those. You just want to suggest them a little bit right now. Alright, last thing I'm going to do with the move brush is establish that chin as a strong masculine chin. So I'm going to straighten out the bottoms. So I clicked and dragged down. So that gave me a nice strong straight edge. And because I created that S curve, that set me up so that the muzzle of the mouth is this separate beast. And now I've got this really beautiful separation of the zygomatic line moving up to the infraorbital triangle and all that good stuff. So if you walk through this process with the move brush and you get to this stage, this is a good place to be. And you don't go to any other brush yet. In the next lecture, we're going to focus on internal forms, and that's when we go to a different brush.